get to be any little thing that we want to be. No matter what comes our way, we'll be together, together.
Welcome to Homeschooling Down South. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Kat. We're two Southern homeschooling mamas sharing real talk, resources, and inspiration for life and learning in the Southeast.
Each week, we'll chat with inspiring voices in the homeschool community, highlight must-see nature spots and field trip gems, and share resources from across the region.
Whether you're new to homeschooling or a seasoned pro, pull up a chair and join us as we celebrate the joy, freedom, and community of homeschooling down south.
We'll laugh together, we'll learn together, find the joys in life together, give each other grace and space to be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Homeschooling Down South. Today, y'all, we are so excited to have Jennifer Henn with us. Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I got to sit in on the most precious session with you and your daughter at the Southeast Homeschool Expo. That was me. Yes. And then we came up and chatted with you both at your booth, and we knew before even going to the expo that we were going to find you and invite you on the podcast because you've been so influential in the homeschooling community, specifically in the Southeast, but overall. So we're glad to have you here and hear all of your words of wisdom.
Well, I am excited for you guys too, and for everyone, all your listeners, because I love homeschool, and that's what I want to do. Is I want to help others to succeed, because I think anyone who really desires to homeschool, they can do it. It doesn't look the same, but mamas, you can do it.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into all the good stuff about what you're doing for the homeschool community, but we love to start out by asking about your personal homeschool journey with your children, what your homeschool looked like. So tell us a little bit about how you came to homeschooling and what your homeschool looked like when your kids were younger.
So when I was a little girl, never knew homeschool existed. When I would play house at home, I would set up my little dolls, my little stuffed animals, and pretend like I was going to teach them my ABCs at home. And I would think I will never send my kids to that awful school. Because
Oh.
I know, pitiful, isn't it? It's just like that was started in me so young, but it's because I had learning disabilities that were never diagnosed. So a lot of people have my story. She's lazy. She won't apply herself. If you would just be disciplined, et cetera, et cetera. So I couldn't think of anything worse to do with my own kids. Well, I moved to Atlanta in the late 80s. Okay, so I'm a little bit older. But I moved to Atlanta in the late 80s to work in the travel industry, and I loved it. I was all about the perks, okay? But I'd also always wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a mom. I knew when my husband and I, our second date, I said, hey, when I have kids, I'm staying home with them. He's like, what? Just want you to know before this goes any further, I'm staying home with my kids when we have them. And the next natural thing was that, kind of always in the back of my mind, but I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him that I really want to homeschool. And then I met some homeschool teenagers, and they were amazing. At first, I didn't know, like, what's different about them? It wasn't different bad. It was different good. And then I found out they homeschool. I'm like, oh, man. And then I met my first homeschool family, and I went, oh, it's a thing. It's a thing. I can do this. Absolutely scared to death. Absolutely scared to death. My family is looking sideways going, you are going to homeschool? But the truth and the sad thing is I always felt really dumb in school. And I would say I was out of school for 2 years before I began to think, maybe I'm not dumb. Well, of course I wasn't
Wow.
dumb. And I did really well in the corporate world because I worked with corporate travel. And actually every job I had once I got out of school, I succeeded. So it's just kind of a lot of undoing. And then with homeschooling, I used grit. It was my grit to learn. I read some books, went to some conferences, learned from some other mamas. And I'm never going to say it was easy, but I would say it was my determination, because my oldest had the same learning disabilities that I have. And then my middle child, of course, the second born, total opposite than the firstborn. And then my daughter, which you sat in on our class, which was our neurodiverse
Yeah.
story. And we were able to touch on some of the things that we went through with her being on the spectrum and having some pretty hefty sensory issues to go through.
Yeah.
So that's my family. And I homeschooled all the way through with help. We had hard years. We had some crises, but I feel like, oh my gosh, my children were glad to be homeschooled. They're like,
Yeah.
thanks for homeschooling. We want to homeschool our kids. So I call that a win. And I know as homeschool parents, we can worry too much. So that's what I want to do too, is I want to unburden you because I feel like so many things came along in my 19 years of homeschooling that when I even say them now, it seems like, wow, how did you make it through? But we do. We take it one year at a time. And I want to unburden you,
Yes.
mamas, because if this family with all of our mess made it and my kids are wildly successful, then yeah.
That's so awesome. So at what point in that journey did you realize, "Hey, this is what I wanna do. I want to help other homeschool families," and when did you start taking those steps to create what you've built now?
Sigh, big sigh. God has plans that we have no idea about.
Amen.
So, in the olden days, we didn't have the internet. And when you signed up to homeschool, your county sent you a packet. Here is
Oh.
all the information that, like, if you had a homeschool business, you would send it to the county and they would put it in the packet and you would receive it. And so, when I knew, and that's a kind of a whole story with my son and his dyslexia and how we worked through that. But when I knew there was something wrong and I got him tested, and I was like, okay, that's great to have a diagnosis, but what the heck do I do now? So I got out that packet and I looked for a support group. That's what I need is a support group. And so I called the support group and found out about a tutor and started going to this woman who was going to help me. And she gave me an option. She said, you can pay me to tutor your son, bring him once or twice a week, or you can learn it yourself and I will teach you. And I will teach you using your son as an example. And I went, okay, cha-ching, I'll learn. But I'll tell you, I absolutely love the program. I loved doing it, but I did not know that this tutor was the owner of the Southeast Homeschool Expo.
Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't even know she was the founder and the owner of the Homeschool Expo. So eventually I found that out. But then she said to me one day, she said, I want you to come and give some sessions. I'm like, no, no, why? Why me? And she says, she's like, well, she told me, she said, you're this and you're this. She goes, but I love the way you homeschool. You got to share with the others the way you homeschool. And I'll tell you what part of my little secret is that I did know it was really important to get that math and language foundation, but I'm dyslexic. We have big picture creative ideas. So I was really good at incorporating all three of my kids in the same kind of lessons. And we did a lot of hands-on. We did exploring, went on, one day trips and all these things. And she's like, no, I want you to come tell people how you homeschool. And I said, I'll think about it. And then she asked me again. I said, tell me why you want me again. Wow, why do you want me? I didn't feel like my kids were old enough. I didn't feel like I had enough experience, but I didn't realize she was looking, they love the expo. So if, somebody hears this, contact me, Jennifer, which will give my information later, because they love local homeschool moms. I mean, the big names are great, but they're like, we want the moms that are relatable, that, that can come and share their success story like you guys
Yeah.
do. And
And
so
your
that was,
neighbors.
and yes. And so that's how it started. Back in the day, she and I would go to these different in-person support groups all around the city.
That's incredible because we knew that you've been involved for a long time, but we didn't know how that relationship started. How long ago was that she said, I want you to speak? Because how long have you been involved with Southeast Homeschool Expo?
That was 2007. 2007. I know. I taught Homeschooling 101 for my 12th year. But no, if you think that's amazing, what is amazing is how much I've learned. And I keep saying, okay, when I don't bring anything to the table, I want to be done. Am I bringing anything to the table? But I keep learning. I keep learning more. I keep, doing more sessions. Honestly, I mean, I'm ready for those grandkids because I would be a better homeschool mom now than I was with mine for sure, because I've already been through it, but I keep learning more on how to teach and work with kids. So when I say 2007 was the first time, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that was a long time ago. I feel really privileged. I feel really honored and that you guys invited me to your podcast. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, you were one of the first people when we started making our list of, okay, these are our goal people that we want to talk to. And, I mean, because you're so well known, especially here in the Southeast. I mean, you're a staple at the Southeast homeschool expos, and I think, Kat, this was our 3rd or 4th year going? 3rd? 3rd, yeah, our 3rd year. So we knew. So at what point did you decide, I am now the homeschool helper and this is gonna be a thing?
Some I've been asked before is like, how do you get started and how did you get this gig? Because I'd spoken at other places too. And I said, actually, I've never requested to speak. I've only been asked. So,
The dream.
well, you know, but I've written and I've learned to write more. And it really is a ministry. But hey, ministries need money to run. So I'm
Mhm.
like a lot of people in ministry. I'm much better at volunteering and doing free, but then I have bills to pay myself for my own little business. And this thing called the IRS, they want me to prove that I'm actually a business. So I'm supposed to make
Pesky,
money.
pesky.
But so, like I said, with a lot of ministry people, we do a lot of volunteer, but I do, some paid things that I don't know. I guess it's just about sharing my life, sharing what I've learned. I keep on learning. I love learning. And that's why I'm still here. That's not really good advice for someone who's wanting to do what I do because I think we all have a different path. No marketer, nobody would say, just wait for people to ask you. But that was actually my prayer because I didn't want to be where I wasn't supposed to be. So I was like, whenever I get asked, I will speak.
Well, and I think one of the reasons that you've been asked, I've attended your sessions, and it's because one, you are such a champion for the mamas and so encouraging, but also you really simplify down the information and kind of take out the noise. There's so much extra noise, but like, what is it that I need to know especially as a new homeschooling family? What do I need to know? How do I do this? What are the parts where like there's no bending, this is what you need to do? And what are the parts where I get to then be responsive to my family? And you're so good at helping clearly explain those boundaries. And I would say that's probably why you've been asked over and over and over again because you do that really, really well. So is that sort of the tone of the book as well?
Yes. So my first book, which was just from teaching homeschooling 101 so many times, it's a wide view of homeschooling. It's an introductory. And I really like it for the idea that people that are on the edge, not sure if they want to homeschool or not. And then the other thing I say is that, if you have your own parents, in-laws, neighbors who think you're crazy, you could give them this book and say, hey, it kind of gives you an idea of what homeschooling looks like. But I'm going to take that book. I'm actually just in the process of working with the editor, taking that book, and I'm going to break it into 4 different booklets. Number one, I think the
Cool.
booklet is better. So the person who's looking at high school help can get high school's help. The person that's brand new, so we can simplify it. It's an easier price point. And then the other book I'm working on is really going to be trying to get people in my head of how I taught my kids with learning disabilities.
Okay, sign put me on the wait list for that one.
I know. My editors are like, will you hurry and finish this? People need it. I'm like, okay.
So your first book, when did it originally come out?
2019.
Okay.
So that's why it's time for a big update. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's awesome. I know you do the Homeschool 101, but what other sessions do you do? I know I went to the one with you and your daughter, but what other types of sessions would you have at the conference?
I bring new stuff all the time and I tell myself, stop doing new stuff. It's so much work. But then I'm always interested in wanting to bring new stuff. But I will tell you that I feel like I love how to homeschool, but I really feel a pull to the mentoring. Mom, obviously, because I'm already done, and the parenting. I used to
Mm.
do a talk, Stop Fighting with Your Kids, 5 steps that I took in my home, which is literally true. So I think the parenting aspect is really important and that I want to lean into that more, combine it with some of the talks that I'm doing. Last year, I think I did a talk that said, if less is more, why am I always crying? Or something like it, just trying
Mm.
to address the day in, day out and pay attention to, well, at the expo, it's really hard to figure out if you've hit on a topic or not, because what are there like 10 or 12 sessions at once for
Right.
people to choose what to go through? But when I did my Stop Fighting with Your Kids, and it was really successful, I did it for a couple of years in a row. I had already done it for like 3 or 4 years and gotten a ton of comments from moms stopping me in the hallway and crying or the bathroom or coming to my booth, but I didn't have it titled that way. So then when I changed the title, which if you've ever had to write titles and descriptions, those can actually be pretty tricky. When I changed the title and descriptions, then all these people came. I'm like, okay. They liked the simple Stop Fighting with Your Kids.
Yeah. I wanna say maybe I might have gone to that one. That feels so familiar to me. And I know if it was offered, I probably went to it because I definitely need that.
Well, we all do, don't we? We need each other. So I like to do the mentoring things, how to use our time, our reality. How do you like this one? And I'm stealing this from my coach, but we can battle our reality, but reality will always win. Like, ooh, yes. So I've actually
Mhm.
done talks before where we come in here and it is very workshoppy. Like, what are your priorities? How much time do you really have? Mama, really, how much time do you
Yeah.
really have? And that's how I've really come to want to unburden families in the last few years. I'm like, okay, I must help them know what to let go of so they can spend their precious time on the most important things and know that they'll get there. They will get there.
Well, and it doesn't have to be perfect all the time or right when you start. I think a lot of times we get these ideas in our head of what we want our homeschool to look like, what our days should look like. And we're so busy trying to make that happen. And then at the end of the day, we wonder why everything just went up in flames because we had all these great intentions, but we probably weren't realistic with the time or even with the children that we have. We have to teach our children, you
Yeah, I really
know?
like this concept of what's your real reality because the comparison in homeschooling can really just challenge your confidence because you're not thinking about your own context, your own reality, and what is actually going to happen in your home. What are your resources? The kids you have, like Kayla was just saying, like, these things are important to consider. You can't just look at what someone else is doing or look at the aesthetic that feels wonderful and expect that to equal success in your homeschool. That's so good, Jennifer. I love that one. Can you offer that one next year so I can come?
There you go. And bring it back again. And another mom, and I'll give her credit. Actually, let me tell this little story because you are right. Talk about comparing. So, my youngest is in high school, and we joined competitive speech because that's what she wanted to do was competitive speech. So think baseball, but it's speech. All right. And there was this one mom, and when they said all the things her daughter was doing, I was just like, she's amazing. That is incredible. I can't believe that they can do this really hard hybrid school and do this other thing that they were involved in and do this. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I wish I had that kind of energy. I wish I was like her, going down that stupid trail. So at the end of the year, and we've done the tournaments and we've done all this stuff, and she's like, this mom that I was idolizing, putting on a pedestal she never asked to be put on, goes, well, this year about killed us. Never doing that again. I didn't think we'd make it. She goes, next year we're going to be back, but we're going to do like one tournament. And we're not going to do this, or this because this year almost killed us. And here I was doing this ridiculous comparing.
Yeah.
But she's also the mama that one day said, yeah, we don't peak in high school. And so sometimes I ask people, Kayla, did you peak in high school? Have you ever learned anything since high school?
Definitely did not peak in high school, thank goodness.
Think, please, let's not talk about my high school. So that's how we act, though. Sometimes as homeschool
Yep.
moms, we're like, my kids have to know everything, and I have to have taught them everything because it feels that way sometimes. And just like, no, they're not going to peak in high school. Don't put that on yourself.
And I love what you said too about not putting the other moms on a pedestal that they didn't ask to be put on. They're not asking for that either because then when she has a hard day, right, then that makes it harder for her to get support if she's always perfect. So that's such a good story, Jennifer, to help all of us remember that none of us need to be on pedestals. None of us have peaked, I don't think. We're all still growing and becoming, and we don't want to put that on our kids or on ourselves. That's a really good story.
And Kayla is
Yeah.
right. Who are your kids? Who is your family? Our kids tend to be a lot like us. Hey. And so, yes. What is, the success? I think it's changing. You guys are younger than me. The the tide is turning or the Titanic is turning. That's what I think it is. Slowly. We hopefully don't sink to that the only thing that equals success is what college your child gets into or their grades. Like, no, there's so much more success than that.
I do think the tide is shifting, and we talk to our children who are only 8 and 6 about the future, and, my oldest, she'll say, "Well, am I gonna go to college? When am I gonna go to college?" "Well, I don't know that you are going to college. We'll see what happens when we get there. If that's what you want to do, awesome, let's go for it. But if you want to cut hair, let's go to cosmetology school. Let's do that. If you want to learn to be a welder, let's go to trade school and do that. We have both, my husband and I, talked about we want to support their passions. And I may have said it before on the podcast, but I had a teacher, a drama teacher in high school, who got so emotional one day he cried, telling us, I just want to see passion from you. I don't care if it's for the theater. I just need to see some passion from you about something. And that stuck with me because that's what I want for my kids. I just want to see passion for something, and we will support whatever that is. So if that leads you down a path to college, great. But if it leads you down a path otherwise, let's go. We'll go with you. And I think we're seeing that a lot at least in the homeschool community, but I think even broader is not our success is not our GPA. It's not even the college at which you got your degree, because my degree is in criminal justice. And while I do love to be a bit of an armchair sleuth, my degree is not what defines me.
And I think, I don't know, I hope that like the employment industry, when our kids are older, will have made the turn with us. But I think so many of us that are parenting young kids now, we did it all right. We did the things, right? We got the really good GPA and we went to this school and we earned the degree and we pushed ourselves. And then we turned around and we realized that didn't actually fulfill us, because that's not where our identity or our fulfillment comes from. I think so many of us in the homeschooling world, we know where our identity lies, and we tried to fit these molds and it didn't serve us well. And so we're not planning to do that for our kids. We're not planning to push a narrative for them that puts them on a path that may not be right for them. But I mean, I hope that by the time my son's 5, I hope by the time that he's looking for a job, that the industry has caught up with whatever path he's taken being worthwhile, even if that's not a college degree. But it's interesting being from a generation that was told we had to go to college, we had to get a degree, or we were not going to find happiness, financial security, etc. And so it's interesting having walked that path and now raising a kid saying, let's see if there's something different.
Let's see if there's something different. For sure. I love that. I always told my kids, here's what your boss wants. They want to be able to trust you, that you're going to show up, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and that you're not going to steal from them. And then they want you to be teachable.
Yeah.
So when you go to work, at some point in time, you'll mess something up. You'll screw up. We all do, because we're human. But if you're regularly trustworthy, have good character, and a hard worker, and are teachable, they'll overlook that because they desperately need that type of employee. And that's what my kids have found out. I mean, when they go to work, they're asked if they have siblings. All 3 of them have been asked that. Do you have siblings that can come to work here? So
That's
character will take your children far. And from what I heard is companies, and I know this is even years ago, companies started dropping some of their jobs that required a degree. They started dropping that. And then now what they're even doing is they're hiring, and they're saying, okay, once we find out that you're that type of employee, now we'll train you, because character matters.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really cool things about homeschooling is we get to really lean into that as just important as math and language arts and science. Developing those character qualities in our kids. I say to Kat all the time, I'm not raising children. I have children. I'm raising adults. So I think that's so important to remember that is just as important as all this academic stuff.
Yes, academics can be caught later. They can. I mean, Deborah Bell, she used to be a big name in homeschooling. I don't think she is as much anymore, but just a very academic family, and she thought she had her son 100% prepared for college. And he went to his first math, and he said, he called her. He's like, Mom, I am not prepared. You did not prepare me. And she said, well, this is what you need to do. And I know not every personality of child will do this, but she said, you need to go to the professor and you need to talk to the professor. And so he went and talked to the professor, and the professor reached out and said, yes, I'm going to help you. And not only did he help him with that class, but he ended up being a mentor to her son his entire 4 years of college. So what seemed like a weakness in her homeschool, God's grace was there, and she, and he was able to do well and had a mentor, and it worked. So that's what I was saying is like the character to go to the professor, the character to do the hard work to catch up on what he was behind in, and he took responsibility. He didn't just continue to say, Mom, you didn't prepare me, or well, I was homeschooled and I wasn't ready. And I think this is a good place to insert. There is no perfect school. I don't think if I only had money for a private school or only if the public school in my district was better. No, there is no perfect school. The same thing can happen if they're going to a school besides yours.
So true. That is so true. And because our kids are so individual. And so it doesn't matter the school, right? A lot of it has to do with your child and how they learn. And yes, there are advantages. There are pros and cons to it all. And, I personally think a big pro of homeschooling is that we can really play to those individualities. But that's such a good reminder not to get caught in the stress of we need to send them to private school. We need to we need to homeschool. We can't get bogged down with that either.
No. And I don't know if you know that my kids all went to public school for a time when I was severely ill.
I remember you
So
saying that.
it felt like the big test to see if it was a test I never wanted to take. But let me tell you something interesting about that. So I spoke at the homeschool convention for my first year, 2007. And when someone asked me a question in one of my sessions, I did 3 sessions, and I just kind of jokingly said, somebody said about putting your kid into public school. And I kind of jokingly said, well, I wouldn't do it for middle school. So the next year I enrolled 2 kids into middle school. They succeeded. Right. The mentor, I would say to her all the time, I'd go and have these meetings, right? So she was helping me to tutor my son and a very specific language program for kids with dyslexia. So we would have these meetings, and not very often when I first got started, I would meet with her regularly, but then I didn't meet with her as often. But one of those days I was just doubting. And she looked at me and she said, Jennifer, I'm like, the famous, he's falling behind and all of this. And this conversation happened before I ever started speaking. It was soon after I started going to her. And she said, Jennifer, he can walk into any public school and succeed. I'm like, no, I don't think so. She goes, no, Jennifer, I'm telling you, he can walk into any public school and succeed. I'm like, okay. And I left and I didn't want to believe it. Why? I just had this block in my head that surely and I think a lot of it comes from the struggle that I had in school, the false beliefs that I was carrying around that I wasn't enough, which sometimes when you think you're not enough, it will drive you to do more. Am I enough for my children? Can I be enough? And I didn't want to believe it. So you know what? It got proved. My kids walked into public school, my daughter in 4th and 5th grade, my boys into middle school, and they all were on the honor roll. They all had friends. They were all in clubs. My daughter, you were in the class. She was on the student council in elementary, please. She was on the news team. They all made it. And I'm like, okay, now I believe it because we've done it. Some of us are that stubborn. I'm afraid I'm that stubborn.
I'm afraid I am too. But that's such a great reminder. And I love how God used that to show you.
And that we can't get so committed in our minds that I will only do schooling this one way, whether you're, devoutly to homeschool or devoutly to public school or private, because the plans can change. And we have to be able to adapt with them. And if we're holding on too tight, sometimes he will pry our fingers open, won't he? And show us everything's actually going to be okay if you trust me. If they have to go to public school for a year or 2, it's going to be okay.
Yes, and I gladly tell people that. Sometimes I say, be careful. Be careful if perfect homeschool is your goal, because it's like the basket of my life was turned upside down. We lost our finances. We lost the ability to live in our home. I lost the ability to homeschool. I couldn't even speak in a normal voice for 2 years. A lot of lessons were learned and, hard things. But even my kids come back and say, yeah, that was hard, but we learned a lot. And so you all learn from me. Don't, like you just said, don't hold it so tightly.
Yeah, and I love that what you said earlier about the mentorship when you were saying, when I have nothing else to offer, I'm ready to be done. But I love the culture of the homeschool community of moms passing down their wisdom to the new and upcoming moms. Kat and I were talking about that offline. earlier, it's just been so beautiful in talking to the people we've already talked to, the people we met at the conference, the moms who've leveled up, the ones who've done it and graduated their kids. Y'all are so generous to us who are still, I mean, in our infancy. I mean, her son is just starting kindergarten. I've got third grade and first grade. So we're just embarking on this journey. And goodness gracious, I really do hope that you're not done quite yet, selfishly, because I would love a couple more years to learn from you. So I think that's really cool. You had your mentor and now you're turning around and doing this for other people. It's wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm always looking for, who's the mentor? Who's going to replace me? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. I mean, there's a lot of mentors, but yeah, specifically.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and selfishly for myself, but also for other people who might be in my boat, I would love to know, you've talked about a little bit about dyslexia, about your daughter on the spectrum. I would love for you to hit on what the challenges were and how you overcame that homeschooling as a person with learning disabilities and then homeschooling children with some disabilities. I'd just love to hear how you navigated that and what your big takeaways were from that.
Oh, hopefully we have time for that. Well, I was very thankful for my mentor and how I was tutored and the grit that I mentioned in the beginning, that how do I get this done? Talking to a lot of people, talking to curriculum writers, what works well if I fell on my face, what do I pick up and do again? I certainly would do a lot of things different now that I did then. But as far as with the dyslexia, learning a multisensory sequential program that's created for kids with learning disability. I was in my 30s when I learned phonics for the first time. Anytime, every year that I would buy curriculum for my kids, I would spend 2 or 3 days poring over it, making sure I understood. So when I was going to do this curriculum with my son, I was practicing with myself. I was, mom time, we need teacher education days. So I would take my teacher education time and figure things out. So I was learning ahead of time. And the thing is, my mind was blown because when I understood what my son needed, all I could think was, oh my gosh, what if someone would have understood me? What if somebody would have given me the help that I needed? What would my life have been like if I would have known this? And I was just one of those observant kids when I grew up. I'm like, it's going to be different when I grow up. I'm going to do different. So I've always put relationship above academics and above the other things. Now, I made some mistakes. There were times I pushed too hard, and you can't do that to your kids. You can't do the whole trying to catch them up, especially if they're a struggling learner. At homeschoolers, we tend to say, hey, I homeschool, and so I can, give this custom education to my child, but then we fall right back into the trap of, am I on target? Am I on target? Am I on target for third grade? Am I on target for fourth grade? Like, wait a minute. Remember, you're homeschooling, so you don't have to do that. So my oldest, I came to learn he needed a year and a half for each math curriculum. So let's say it was a fourth grade math curriculum. A lot of times they're done by levels in homeschooling, so you don't see an actual grade, but we can plan on it taking a year and a half to get through that. We need to move a little slower. And I learned so much more about math, which I would do some things differently in the beginning. I really dug in and understood the language and how to teach him language. But I want everyone to hear a mistake I made, and I think it's a common mistake. When you have your curriculum and you're all ready and you're all planning, but it's not working for your child or it's not going well, and then you're frustrated, but you're frustrated with yourself. But if you're frustrated like that in front of your kids, they really think you're frustrated with them. Even kind of when you say, oh no, I'm not frustrated with you. I mean, mom needs to take a break. Mom needs to figure this out. Just be really careful with your body language and your frustration level, because the kids, they see that in us and they think it's them when it's not. Or maybe you feel like it is them. But once
Yeah.
they think there's a problem and that you're upset, then our brain literally goes into a different portion that does the thinking, and it's looking for a problem. Or when we go from joy, because so many of us want our kids to have joy, but when we go from joy in learning to stress because mom is stressed, now nobody's learning.
That makes so much sense. And it makes me think about, I heard somebody say once, we're the thermostat in our home. We set the temperature. I will be the first one to say I struggle so much with that with my neurodiverse child. because I did not plan to homeschool. I did not have your journey. It came on very quickly for me. And so I never thought of myself as a teacher at heart. And sometimes I find myself getting frustrated. I don't understand. I don't know how to explain this properly to you. And I don't understand why you're not getting it. And I really have to rein myself in to not show that to her because then she thinks, well, I'm not getting it. I'm not smart enough. I can't do this. And I don't want to ever put that on her.
I know you don't. No, that's exactly what can happen, even if we say it's not. So, that's just kind of a retraining of us and how to not react, how even just to take time and to think of how am I going to respond when it doesn't work. So by the time I got to my third child and there was a frustration, I knew it wasn't because she was lazy or, it's the same with my oldest. It's like there's in no other realms of his life is he lazy. I mean, that was the last way you would ever describe this child as lazy. So in schoolwork, when it seemed like he was lazy, it's like, no, he's not lazy. He's not a lazy person. There's a problem here. But by the time I got to my third daughter, as soon as she started to, there started to be frustration from her, I would just like, oh, we're just going to take a break. We're just going to take a break and figure out what she needed that way as far as the breaks go.
Really appreciate the vulnerability you just shared in telling us that part of your journey. And so that's the key is just take a break, step away before you let yourself get frustrated. Like what do we do in that moment? We take a break and we do what? We focus on relationship. Is that your advice for
Well,
those
sometimes,
frustrating?
I've always said moms need time out. Mama needs a timeout. When Hannah was young and with math was starting to cry and I didn't know what to do next, but I was just like, it's okay. I had to, it's okay. It's fine, Hannah. Just don't do math. Just don't do math. And then I realized she needed more breaks as far as we would do math for 2 or 3 days. Take a break from math for 2 or 3 days. Do math for 2 or 3 days. Take a break, etc. Anytime I think that we're about to get frustrated, then it's like go outside and swing. Or you know what? Never mind, kids. I have a change of plans. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do our history right now. And then that gives you time alone another time. Again, as long as you're worried about whether you get through 5 assignments a week, you're going to have a really hard time doing this. If your number one goal is to complete 5 assignments a week, which I know there's scheduling and planning and people kind of say to do that. I hope your listeners are getting that there's a balance. We need to discern. That is
Yeah.
a huge part of it is discernment. Is my child manipulating me? Because you're children and your children with learning disabilities will manipulate you. My husband once said to me, I can't remember what I was going off on to him after he got home. And he goes, you know what? There's 3 of them and 1 of you, and they're going to wear you down. And I'm like, well, they are. So discern. You want to discern. When is it a character issue? When is it a learning disability issue? When does this everybody needs a break? And then you, mama, you need that break and you need to maybe go back and look again at how you were doing it, phone a friend,
Yeah.
get someone that just, a mentor doesn't have to be done. A mentor just needs to be a couple stages ahead of you, a couple of years ahead of you, just depending on what you need.
Yeah, I love that. So obviously, we've talked in depth about the Southeast Homeschool Expo, but do you go to other conventions or conferences to speak, or do you keep it real small, just stay here at the Southeast Homeschool Expo?
I keep it real small. First of all, I had a lot of recovery with my health, and my health, I have chronic health issues, made it hard for me to travel. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get this stuff on video. Hannah and I recorded a video
Yeah.
the other day. It needs to be edited. I have just a couple of on there yet now, but I am starting a YouTube channel because it just feels like I did get invited to the Midwest Homeschool Expo, and I've been to one in Tennessee. So I might do 3 this next year. But I think where it really would be most helpful is if I get things on YouTube. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love the YouTube idea. I think that's great because then you're so accessible to so many people.
Yes. And like you've been a gem for us here in the Southeast and you are clearly like part of the heartbeat of the Southeast Homeschool Expo, but what a gift it would be for someone who's not here. I mean, obviously we are talking about homeschooling down south, but we would love for people that are amazing here in the South to have a further reach. So I think that's amazing. As we've been talking, I've been thinking about friends of mine who don't live in this area, but who could benefit from particularly the conversation we just had about neurodivergence and that it's a shame that they can't come here to Atlanta to hear it. But if you're on YouTube, than anyone anywhere. That's awesome.
Yes, I think that's what the way it needs to be. And then it's
Yeah.
easier for everyone.
Well, we like to wrap up our episodes by asking our guests to share a homeschool win. So we would love to hear whether it's, a recent one from this summer's conference or a homeschool win from raising your children. We would love to hear a homeschool win that stands out in your mind.
Absolutely. I don't know if I'll ask his permission or not, but sometimes I think I should just do a whole episode on husbands. Maybe I'll just title it Husbands, and
I love that.
make a face or something, right? Sometimes our husbands aren't 100% on board or they're not sure we're doing what we need to be doing. And, you can have this 2-hour long conversation with your kids about something. And then at the dinner table, when he asks them about it, none of them know anything. And no, she doesn't teach us anything. They don't do anything. But we were going to go see my husband's family in Iowa. And my husband grew up in a small town on the Mississippi River. So we did this unit study on men of the Mississippi, and we were studying from the top of the Mississippi to the ocean, all the history, all the geography, all the science of the animals in it. And the kids were so excited. They could not wait to go see the Mississippi. And there was a Mississippi River Museum. So they were pretty young, but they were still excited to see a museum. So we're driving, the 12, 14-hour drive to Iowa. Across the river, the kids would be like, you're only an hour away from home. Is that the Mississippi? Is that the Mississippi? Across the Ohio. Is that the Mississippi? Like, not yet, not yet. And then my husband just looked at me and he goes, he's driving the minivan and I'm sitting next to him and he looks at me, he goes, were you ever this excited about learning?
Wow.
And I said, no, I never was. And then he said, it seems like every time you do a project, they learn.
Love it. Oh,
That's
And
so
they-
cool. And
They
I feel
really
like,
did.
yeah. And I feel like there's so many people who are going to hear that story, and that's going to be such a boost for them, because I feel like on every homeschool forum that I'm on or whatever, there's always someone asking, how do I get my husband on board? And they're now going to be able to say, listen to this story. Listen, excitement for learning. That's so cool.
Yes.
and I
so
love that
we
he
loved
recognized that.
that was a relief because that wasn't always there. Like I said, I could do a whole episode. We could do a whole episode on husbands, right?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom with us today. If people want to buy your book or want to find you on social media, what is the best way for them to find you?
Best way to find me, my book is on Amazon. It's called Take the Mystery Out of Homeschooling, a how-to guide. And my website is jenniferhenn.com. And they can email me, jennifer@jenniferhenn.com. And then finally, the YouTube that I'm getting going, and there are a couple on there, is The Homeschooler's Helper.
Awesome.
I
And
love
we'll be
that.
linking to all of that in our show notes.
Yes. And
Great.
Kat, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me at Recreating Camp. How about you, Kayla?
You can find me at Scratch Made Simple, and you can find us at Homeschooling Down South. If you know of somebody that we should talk to, or a program or an experience that we should check out, email us at hello@homeschoolingdownsouth.com. Jennifer, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you for giving of your time. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would be so grateful for a 5-star rating and review wherever you are listening.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all next week.
And we'll love together, we'll learn together, explore this whole wide world together. No matter where we are, I have you, you have me, and today that's all we need.